All right. Hi, everybody. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajan.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson. Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Great. Jennifer, welcome. We've got a conversation today about the level of service that our Parks Department will provide. With that, Jennifer's going to lead us through it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Jennifer Tomlinson, Park Superintendent. I'm going to put up my screen here, so can everybody see that? Beautifully serene park picture. So
Was that from the Williams Park out in Harris
Marion
Ranch
Williams.
area?
Yep, Marion Williams,
That's a really pretty view.
isn't it? So just a quick outline of what we hope to cover today, really what our current service levels are, how we break the city up into different geographies, what progress we've really made on achieving those levels of service, the gaps that we have, and then really just where we're headed in the future and how we develop our plan moving forward. So with that, I just wanted to give a little bit of background on what our current level of service is. So we define the level of service to articulate how we're serving our residents in the city. They're served by a hierarchy of park types, and we've had this hierarchy in place since about the mid-90s. So we have neighborhood parks, community parks, regional parks, and then we have like trails connect in the Greenbelt and different ways to get people kind of around town. In defining the level of service, we have to set the baseline for when we develop our capital improvement plan. So the capital improvement plan will be based on our level of service, how we calculate that amount, and what we are looking at moving forward. And that feeds into our impact fee collection practices. So it's all wrapped up in this one big kind of thing with lots of different pieces and parts. So our neighborhood park service level has been at 1.15 acres per 1,000 residents. We have that laid out, and that was set as a goal for 2030. And those parks are generally 7 to 10 acres in size. So we have them kind of all over town. And then we have community parks that are larger. Those are about 20 acres where we have sports fields, and we generally assume people are going to drive to those facilities. So they're reservable. They just have larger spaces. And that one we have 0.81 acres per 1,000 people. And once we build Alta Harris, we will have met these service levels. So it's a really good time to kind of take a look at them, take our stock, figure out where we are and what we want to move forward with. So just a map kind of showing where we're at on our neighborhood parks. The way that this has historically been calculated is we put a dot in the middle of the map, we draw a circle around it, that's half a mile. It's as the crow flies. It doesn't take into account any kind of connectivity, how people get there. It's just kind of a circle on the map. So as our data collection practices have really started improving, we now are able to better tell how people are accessing our parks and kind of what our best vision is for how people should be able to get to parks. So with neighborhood parks in particular, we really want to, make it so that they're highly accessible by bikes and peds, so that people can walk and they don't have to drive to get out, to get to something that's only half a mile away in theory. But when you look at the map, you see we have really good coverage. And that's because it's not taking into account that street network. It's really just kind of a blob on a map, and it covers a much larger area. So with our community parks, it's the same kind of thing. It's a larger blob, but it's still just a mile circle around it. But as we've been kind of taking a look at and taking stock in where we're at, kind of rerunning the analysis on the accessibility of our facilities, we've really taken a look at that street network, pathways, sidewalks, so that we can get a better idea of how we're really serving people so that they do have that ability to walk or bike to parks. So I chose Boise Hills Park. It's a fairly dramatic example because the street grid in the area is not very good. But you can see how we go from serving a much larger population down to something that's about a third of the size of what we are covering, kind of in the existing level of service and the way that we calculate it currently. So this has really this has made us take a look at how all of our parks are serving the areas that they're in and what kind of connectivity we need to have to achieve the kind of a greater service level for the people who are within a distance of those parks. So the 10-minute walk is something in kind of park world nationally that a lot of cities have gone to. Our national organization, which is the National Recreation and Park Association, who provided the guidelines for acres per thousand and the kind of the half-mile radius, have really gone to this 10-minute walk as a service level. So the most important part of this question is, how do we define it? And what do we want folks to have access to? And something that we really learned a lot through COVID is the need for having open spaces close to where people live. That way they can get out of their houses, when everybody's in it and they need their space. So our parks got used way more than normal through COVID. We saw a lot of impacts, trails, greenbelt. Our use was up double in most places. But we really want to be able to provide those facilities close to home for folks. And so having the park not necessarily tied to an acreage, right? So it's saying everybody will have access to a 7-acre park is a really difficult goal to achieve, mostly because we're built out as a city, and finding a 7-acre parcel is like the most amazing thing in the world, and there aren't a lot of them in the city. So we've really built up and we've grown up, and we just need to kind of reevaluate what we are able to achieve. And so bringing in the canal pathways, green pathways, just really providing so people can get outside is kind of the direction that we're headed in. And then just as we look at our city from an accessibility and a connectivity standpoint, being able to provide services within the 15-minute walk or a 15-minute bike ride as part of the 15-minute city, parks are considered an essential service, and one that we would need to be able to achieve that service level. So with that kind of framing the kind of discussion on where we're at and what the 10-minute walk is, I just wanted to give you guys a couple of examples of what this could look like. Historically, like I said, 7 to 10 acres, 20 acres, much larger land. And now we're really looking at smaller kind of micro parks and being able to provide those services in conjunction with other projects that are going on. So this is just an overview of the city. We are currently working through these numbers, and we participate in the Trust for Public Lands Park Score project, and we have for the last probably 5 or 6 years. And that's where they measure the top 100 cities by population, and they determine who they rank us according to where we stand in a number of different metrics. Like this is where we're the #1 dog park city in the country because we provide more off-leash dog areas than any other city for the population that we have. But when we look at our map, we're at 63% of residents that currently do have access or live within a 10-minute walk of an open space. And we included all of our facilities and then schools as well, because they do have open space that is available to the public after school hours. So it becomes very clear our areas where we have some deficiencies, right? So our West Bench is in need of a little bit of attention, and then a little bit further south of the freeway, kind of in the southwest part of town. And then I forgot to mention, just to put it out there, we're not including the impact area in this discussion because we haven't changed our impact fees in the impact area since, I believe, like 2008. So we just left that out of it.
Madam Mayor, quick question on the 10-minute walk. What does that entail? Is that a certain distance?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, it's generally a half a mile.
Okay.
But depending on, it's depending on the person so it's different for different populations and users. So like it's broken down based on the different age groups that we would see. So,
Madam Mayor, thank you. Just to follow up on Councilmember Thompson's question about who does that apply to and what does that mean? Is there any metric in there to consider folks with mobility issues, that sort of thing?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, I'd have to go back and double check and see if there is. I believe that there is, or at least it's accounted for in there. And I know that they look at the the physical accessibility of sidewalks and the street system and all of that when they're doing the kind of the behind the curtain calculation. So. So a few different ways we can look at getting there. We can look at the smaller park sites. Franklin Park is a really good example of a really exciting project that we were able to kind of, as a city, all pull together around with the housing project that's going in. And then with our facility in Franklin Park's only 3 acres. This has been a really interesting and great partnership that we have had with the developer on this project. So we have been working with him on, he's basically like, they're providing a publicly accessible restroom that faces onto the park. So we don't have to build a separate building in the park. And then we'll maintain it. Or on this one, we're able to use CDBG funding to purchase like play equipment. So we're going to be able to really improve the amenities in the area as that affordable housing project comes in. So looking for opportunities to partner on those kinds of affordable housing projects. They're really great uses that co-locate well with each other. And they create just really lively and dynamic spaces, really, really close to where folks live. And then also identifying potential parcels that could increase connectivity. We have an amazing network of parks, and with our canal pathway plan and some of our other pathways that we have going on, we do have the ability to really leverage our existing assets so that we can get more people into them. So this is just an example of a project. On the left-hand side of the screen is a property over off of Shamrock that you guys heard, I think in November, and it was a LEAP project for affordable housing in the area. And we took a look at this as Elaine, Councilmember Clegg actually brought this to our attention to look at this area because it's a definite and very significant gap in our service. And we are starting to see development over in this area, and it provides a really great opportunity to achieve a few of those goals that we have as a city, increasing affordable housing and then creating park space near where folks live. So if we were to look at any kind of park in this area, we would end up filling out a big deficit that we have in our service area, and we would be able to serve those new residents moving into the city. This is just an example. We haven't done anything to move forward on this, but the kind of the blue blob on the right shows an increase in service level to about an additional 700 households. So it would really move the needle on where we're at in this area. And then we would be able to start looking at how we connect up to that, because there are actually some canals over in this area that could provide some real connectivity if we were to put some sort of facility over here. And then this is a project that's pretty live as of last week, and that's the Kasha Park Bikeway. So this bridge was placed last week, and this is an ACHD project. And this provided the opportunity, just by working with the canal company and really looking at the greater connectivity in the area, of creating not only a bikeway that spans almost the entire central bench, but as you can see on the right, we are actually opening up access to a number of homes that haven't had access to that park before. So those folks will now be able to access the park without having to go out on like Orchard, which is a pretty terrible street to walk on, or any of the other arterials, because it is really cut off in the area. So we just have a couple of considerations. I call this my budget slide that Eric Villamoria makes me put in. So impact to the general fund is really going to be one of them. And then as we go through this process, talking about our maintenance and operations, serving smaller park sites and serving more of them is a little bit more maintenance, has a bigger impact on our maintenance. It's not something that we don't already do, so we're very comfortable with it, and we do, it is part of our portfolio as it is. We do have some really small park sites in the city, so it's not something that is unfamiliar or uncommon for us. And then looking at the impact on the Affordable Housing Fund in the event that we are able to partner through those kinds of projects, how we look at impact fees through there, potential deferrals, and just what the net impact is going to be on that Affordable Housing Fund. The timing, right now we're working on the capital plan. It's a 10-year planning horizon, but this would really be our introduction into looking at this service method and this model to see if it works for us as a city. It would be our first kind of, step into this to see how we can accommodate it. You guys know our real estate prices are like through the roof right now. So our dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. That being said, we do have a lot of grant opportunities that are available to us that we could partner on. Like the Land and Water Conservation Fund is a great program that we've done a lot of work with, and that's a 50% match. So if we got 250,000 from them, we would match that, and then we would have a much more robust project. So that's kind of the long and the short of it in 15 minutes or less. And I guess with that, I'll stand for questions.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. That was awesome. But I have a question.
Of course.
So I imagine for the community parks, you can probably track by the nature of their use, how many people use them. Is there a way to track the use of the neighborhood parks? Like how many people do we have
Madam
using
Mayor,
them?
Councilmember Sanchez, we use a lot of temporary pedestrian counters. So we can always deploy those to kind of wherever we want, and we can get at least a point in time count of how many people are using them. We generally try to set them out in like May, June, because those are our highest use times when everybody's like ready to get outside after a long winter. So that we could absolutely do that. And then it would be ped and bike is what we generally count. We don't usually count vehicles. We don't have vehicle counters. And we don't really see there's not really an impact as far as vehicles go until we get to like the regional parks, like the Esterson plots, or like Ann Morrison or Julia Davis. So, yep, we could absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. Jennifer, thank you so much for the presentation. I feel like we've known for a long time that we have some gaps in level of service, and it's really helpful to me to see that represented geographically and with mapping. I am very lucky to have a neighborhood park in my neighborhood. And I know that at my park, at least, we contract with Sunshine Landscape on like the grass maintenance in the park. Do you have kind of a feeling for how much that ongoing maintenance is per year on a neighborhood park that you build into modeling? Because it seems like, I've lived near a couple of neighborhood parks in my time in Boise, and those seem to be a really great tool. And it seems like they might be a little bit less expensive just to have some neighborhood green space, and they're widely used by everyone in our neighborhood. So it could be kind of an more easily deployed tool than doing a whole green up with a playground, with, all of these other things.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, we do have that information and we track it by park location. And we have a kind of a tiered model in our maintenance. So with our parks that are further away from the urban core, those are the ones that we usually contract out. So Sunshine is out at like the Magnolias, Molinar, those kinds of places. But we do have it broken down by park. So I'd be happy to get that information and bring it back if you would be interested in seeing that. Or not.
I don't know if it's that important.
You guys really want to find out about maintenance costs?
I guess I'm just trying to figure out like what's the way that we can deploy open space as widely as we can, especially in those underserved areas, in the most affordable and sustainable way possible. Does that make sense? And maybe you have a sense of what the best way to do that would be.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, there's almost a level of where it's more affordable to contract something out for us than to bring on additional staff to take care of it. And so we have somebody who oversees all of those contracts, and he could very easily tell you which ones are, where it makes more sense to have that contracted out, because it is a lot cheaper in some instances. So, and you're by Aldape Park, correct? Is that right? Okay. So yeah, that one definitely is contracted out because it's so remote and it's not located by anything else that we do. So that's really how we look at it, is geographically. And then we just kind of tier the level of service based on where it's at.
Well, and also to the council member's question, Jennifer, you had suggested at the beginning that we do look to, as the council member was bringing up, smaller parks. So reimagining what a park looks like. Doesn't have to be the large expanse of Julia Davis or Camel's Back, but it could be the size of Aldape or Boise Hills, like you showed, or the little park that is near the council president, that creates opportunities for residents to have access to open space within that 10-minute walk, but with a different expectation of what that looks like as our city continues to grow.
Madam Mayor, just to kind of follow up on that, I'm thinking of, Jennifer pointed out that land prices are getting so expensive as we grow. And so it might make sense to create more of those kind of pocket park opportunities on lower cost, small pieces of land throughout the city than to try to get acres of land. And I think that may have been said. So maybe I'm just amplifying it. I'm not sure. But I appreciate the conversation because I think that having access to open space is part of what makes neighborhoods so vibrant. And so creating more opportunities is really important.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, we'll go with the council president pro tem and then the council president.
Just a quick question about terms. Is the micro park, is that different from the pocket park?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, they all have a bunch of different names. Basically anything less than 7 acres in size, we can kind of call it whatever we want. We go with micro park just because it's, in our scale, it's really small. When most of the stuff we have is 7 to 10 acres in size, so it's teeny. But it's just basically anything that's less than 7 to 10 acres in size. Those are the neighborhood park is usually kind of the base of what we do, which is the 7 to 10 acres. So we could all come up with what we want to call them. It could be awesome.
But I think there's also great potential with the work that the Parks Department and Council President and Council Member Halliburton are doing on the canal pathways to make it possible to have 10-minute access to parks in different ways too, because of the potential there for additional and different kinds of open space.
Definitely.
Council President?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That gets at actually what my question was. And I was going to mention the little park near my house, Gordon Bowen Park. It's on what used to be 2 residential lots. I don't know if it's the smallest park in the system that's actually got playground and stuff and so forth, but I think it might be. But it's plenty big. Lots of kids use it. Lots of people go over and picnic. And so I guess in answer maybe to further probe the question that Council President Pro Tem Sanchez asked, are we going to develop some criteria? I suspect we'll take anything at some point, like Gordon Bowen ended up being those 2 houses that were abandoned and eventually demolished, and the city ended up with the land. But it might be helpful as part of this to create criteria about what we're aiming for. For instance, the example that you showed on West Fairview and Shamrock, one would suspect a 1 acre park there would probably be really big enough to serve the needs and small enough to be affordable and part of whatever development ends up on that remaining 10 to 12 acres. So I just wondered if you thought through that process.
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, we have kind of put some preliminary thought towards it. So there is, there's 2 different potential outcomes that could happen. One, we don't want to get I don't want to say junky leftover parcels, but ones where the access really doesn't serve anybody other than the people around it, right? And we have a lot of areas like that in the city where it's a very small and it has a very limited impact. So I think what we would look at doing is trying to figure out a way to articulate kind of the highest number of people we can serve through different, not just sizes, but really taking a look at the location, the connectivity to it, and really focusing on how many people we can serve. To me, that's probably the most important thing that we can take a look at. And then the equity piece in it is also super critical. And the equity portion has actually, as of this year, been built into the Trust for Public Lands, our criteria and how we're ranked nationally. So it is a piece that we're looking at. But in instances where something may be so small that it doesn't really impact anything, that's where maybe we look at our connectivity. So if there are two houses and we tear them down, maybe we can build a pathway to a facility that we already have, or we can look at different ways to connect up what we already have. So I think we have a lot of different options in how we actually implement this. And we can set up some standards so that, we can just really make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck where we are, because unfortunately, I think we're probably going to be paying development prices, which are much higher than people donating to the city out of the kindness of their heart. So,
Thank you. That helps a lot. I think those are all good points. The other one I thought of, especially with canal pathways, is there might be opportunities along those to have little pockets along the canal pathway with access to it. So. Keep our eyes open for those kinds of locations.
Madam Mayor?
Sure, go ahead.
Jennifer, that was a short presentation that you packed a lot into, and it was pretty impressive to be able to look at things from that point of view, particularly the slide that you had in West Boise, kind of over by Shamrock, and then the other one with what that bridge did to open up a few more houses. And how bang for the buck you can really not necessarily build a new park, but create access that way. That was such a great way to look at it. And I just would encourage you to keep doing that. I mean, even same in Kasha Park, like we can look at that north entrance along Garden Street, and that same map could show us exactly how many people that would reach if we were able to create access at these different points. And so I wanted you to let you know how helpful that tool was for me. And I think it would be helpful for other people as well when we really examine this stuff in the future. So great job.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, thank you. I'm a map person, so I'm glad there are other people like me in the world.
Great. Well, I think that unless you need additional direction today, I think we're good.
No, Madam Mayor, I feel like we're all good with this. And so we'll move forward as far as next steps on developing a capital plan that really does focus on connectivity in smaller parks, and then those criteria that we are involved in and how. So we'll probably bring the criteria back before you guys just for your input, clarification on that. And then we'll move forward with our capital planning.
That sounds
Sound
great.
good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
In person.
All right. We have an executive session we're headed into.
Madam Mayor, I move to go into executive session regarding pending and probable litigation per Idaho Code 74-2061F.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
She's frozen.
Yes.
Oh, there she goes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. See everybody back here at 6 o'clock.